Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports. When
It comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
TexAgs Live.
I feel like I should be listening to the theme song from the Jeffersons. You know, we're moving on up.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
It's a blessing to be in this position, and we're just thankful to be here. We're thankful to have the opportunity to go out there and play in front of the 12 men.
He is a guy that has gotten better and better and better. He's just got that dog in him.
It's been special. The 12th man this past week was unbelievable.
And this is a real program. It's not fake. This is a real place. And if you want to be really good at football, this is a really good place to be.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Buchanan?
Nuño.
How's the escargot or whatever you're eating at on the beach? Shrimp cocktail. How's that going for you?
Well, I did have some shrimp yesterday. But no escargot. And I haven't been on the beach.
No quiche. For some reason, your sound's coming in a little weird. OB, so Billy was on the show yesterday, and he's on very often with us. We're talking about Michael Early and his future and what Trev Alberts is probably going through right now. And I think Trev kind of copycatted, if that's the way to phrase it, what Billy was saying. Not that he was copying him, but that the playbook is, I've spoken to Coach Early, and we'll evaluate things. Let's listen to him, because you're the one who asked the question, talking about the state of the baseball team and Michael Early's future.
Well, I'm not prepared to talk about the baseball program right now. Obviously, they just got done playing in Hoover, and we had these meetings here in Destin, so I've had a little bit of communication with Michael, but I'd love to get back to College Station, sit down with him, and sort of recap. So I think it's good to spend a little time, both he and I, as we kind of assess the situation. Obviously, he would tell you the exact same thing. We had some highs in baseball. Clearly, we fell short. It was a frustrating season and disappointing on a lot of different levels. But at the appropriate time, we'll be able to talk about baseball. There's always an economic factor, right, to making decisions. But I can assure you, in this situation, those decisions are not being driven economically. We'll do what we think is in the best long-term interest of our baseball program and our athletic department.
OB, what takeaways do you take? What takeaways do you take from what Trev said yesterday?
The way I see it, let me see if this does this.
It might be on our end, OB. Just talk. We'll figure it out.
Okay. I hesitate to put words in Trev's mouth, but my take from that is that I want to get back to College Station and fire somebody in person, and not. Now I may be way off on that, but. And then he says, economics, which is one of the reasons, we always wonder, hey, do they want to, with what they're paying Jimbo and with budgets the way they are now, do you want to do you want to pay anybody not to coach, right? So does that give more job security? And yet he said, hey, economics is not going to be an issue with this. Maybe you can look at that both ways, but I just get the feeling that when you say, well, we're not going to discuss it here. I'm going to get back to College Station, meet with. Yeah, I mean, all those things is what you would do anyway. You would. But I just kind of got that feeling. Again, I may be way off, but that's kind of the way I read it.
This is TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studios. To Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. Currently, I'm hanging out at the Holistic Planning Cool Zone. OB, to me, I tend to agree with you, but I feel like what he's saying is, look, I'm not accepting what happened. I know Michael's not accepting what happened. Let's talk face to face and figure out if we can fix it or not, and then I'll evaluate everything, and we can decide the future of the A&M baseball program.
Well, you know what? If that's the case, then I would almost believe then he's going to retain Michael Early, which would be fine with me. But because I believe that that it's possible, in situations like this. Heck, we know it because we saw it the adverse way last year. You might have already been in touch with coaches elsewhere about their interest in A&M, if they would be interested, and already have the ball rolling. Again, I'm not saying that I know this to be a fact. I'm just speculating what I would think that in years of covering this. Typically, you're making contact with coaches that might be your next coach, before you've made a move. So, if I guess what I'm saying is, if it's still undecided, then I think that's a good thing for Michael Early. Obviously, if it's still undecided, because then I would think that during the year when they were obviously underperforming, that you were probably looking into the possibility of what coaches might be out there, and then with the way they lost to Missouri, I think a lot of people would have made that decision. But again, I'm just going by what I suspect. I don't know Trev Alberts well enough to know what his MO on something like this would be. So I'm not by any means advocating for Michael Early to be fired or retained. I'm just trying to get express what kind of feeling I have on it, just based on what he said, which basically wasn't anything other than when I get back to College Station, then we'll decide what's best for the program.
OB, let's play a game. Let's erase the Missouri series completely from the conversation. It never happened. It never took place. Okay. Everything else stays the same. Everything but the Missouri series, the terrible start, a valiant run in Hoover. Everything stays the same. Is Michael Early still your head coach in that scenario? Are we still having this conversation? How about that?
Yeah, I think we are, because if everything else stays the same, you're still not in the playoff. And I think the minimum expectation at A&M should be to get into the playoff. Now, it's different. And I think you'll agree with me on this, David. It's different if you're a new coach taking over a program that was underperforming, and that's why you had to bring in a new coach. Like typically the case is you change coaches because the previous one was failing. But when you take over the program that had the talent that they had on it and had done as much as they did, and despite all the you can say, hey, there's a lot of injuries, and that's a legitimate point to bring up. And I think at Texas A&M you might lend credence to that, the injury issue, if hey, I understand you had injuries, so you didn't get to host. I understand you had injuries, so you didn't get to the super regionals. But with the guys that were still on hand and the guys you brought in, and not even getting into the playoff at Texas A&M after taking over a talented program or a talented roster, I think we probably would be. I think there would be those out there that would be saying, hey, we expect at minimum to get into the 64 team baseball playoff. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with you on the baseball playoff thing, and I didn't make this like a part of the discussion, but I think they're in the playoffs if they don't lose the Missouri series, because if you look at what they did the second half of the season, it was fantastic, right? The Missouri series happened, and the Texas series happened. Sorry?
If you're going to tell me that they're going to be in the playoffs, without the Missouri season, then yes, that would change my opinion on that, because I'd say, okay, you had all those injuries, but at least you got in the playoff.
But the problem in the whole conversation is that even though I think overall you played pretty good baseball to close out the season, you played your worst baseball against the worst team, and that's why the beginning of the season weighs more and the end of the season weighs more in this discussion when we're trying to figure out the future of the baseball program.
Yeah. Look, you always talk about, and rightly so, looking at the totality. And yeah, there were some great moments, and A&M looked like a team that had the tendency to play to its competition. You know, you play in a great team, you are a really, really good team. You go out and, as we all saw, you beat Tennessee on the road in a series, and you beat Arkansas on the road on the series, and you win at home against LSU in a series. And even though you got swept, you played Texas, who was number one at the time, as you know, to win one run in every game. So they played to their competition, but then you're playing Kentucky and you don't play well and lose that series and you get swept by Missouri. So I think, again, those are the things that, to me, that eliminate the whole, well, we had a rash of injuries excuse, not for not, going far into the tournament, but for not getting into the playoff at all.
OB, there's a couple of texts that came in. One from K. Mick that I find interesting on the YouTube page. It says 13, not interesting, it's just a fact. 13 schools made the baseball tournament. It's not that hard. And that's the reality of the situation. When that many teams, when 13 of the 16 teams make the tournament, you've got to be one of those 13 teams.
Yes. And so that's why I would anticipate, not saying that that's necessarily what I want to happen, but that's why I would anticipate, there being a change. If A&M was not one of the 13, but again, it was a situation where, we had a change in coaches because the previous guy failed, and there's not a whole lot of, kind of like the Bucky McMillan situation, right? I'm taking over a program that either failed or was gutted. I don't have any players, but he had players.
Hey, let's check in at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Ava Davis there. Ava, can you read this text from Keuchel, class of 09? I think it's some interesting thoughts, which I disagree with, to be very honest.
He says, I just want to go on record and say I blame Bronny and Nuño for this unfortunate baseball season. They shared some despairing words in the early season about the band Chicago, which was absolute blasphemy. Consider yourselves judged by a just God.
The truth is, I said Peter Cetera jams, okay?
Yeah,
so
I was the guy that was disparaging Chicago, and I stand by that.
Yeah, I think Peter Cetera by himself was a fantastic solo artist, and the movie Karate Kid 2 wouldn't be the same without his soundtrack. That's just the facts. I speak facts here on the program, OB. If you want to be a part of the conversation this morning, you can call us up multiple ways, or you can call us one way, or you can text us as well. If you call us, we'll pick it up on the Buppies Catering Hotline. That number, 979-693-1150. We're going to continue saying hi to people. Behind the glass is the director of the program, the always happy and stress-free Nick Savage. Nick, good morning, buddy.
Oh, yeah, we're living life today. We're living like OB on the Destin beach, which I'm sure... I was talking about this yesterday, OB. I was jealous of you. Then I was like, wait, he's just trapped inside all day. He doesn't even get to go enjoy the beach.
Bro, he could ride outside.
That's what I would be doing.
No, you really can't. There's a lot of other people out there. I guess you could, but do you want to get sand and all that in your laptop?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Well, and then there's always all the meetings that are going on, inside. What I think, truly, I think that, I've had a good run, and I'm very, very blessed, and I'm certainly not complaining about being here. But I think next year, if TexAgs covers the spring meetings, that maybe you or...
I'll 100% do that. 1,000. Yeah. I'll do it. I'll do the interviews. I'll get my 9 hours of sleep, but I will run on the beach and I will walk shirtless in front of all the SEC media. Facts.
Well, I believe the shirtless part without a doubt. I mean, it's a slam dunk. But and you might not, and you might find it's not as glamorous as it seems to be.
Hey, Nick, anything else you want to tell us this great morning?
Nothing I need to tell you, but I'm interested the most. All the commentary yesterday that came out about SEC scheduling and basically that, what's the point of the SEC expanding to a 9-game conference schedule when, they're not guaranteed. They're basically using that as leverage when they're discussing the new playoff format. I find all that super interesting. So just looking forward to y'all's commentary on that.
Here's the reality of the situation, OB. If the ACC and the Big 12 want to continue to complain, which, by the way, I would complain if I were them too, then the SEC can be like, you know what? No problem. We're just going to do our own thing with the Big 10 over here. You guys go enjoy Division II football. We're going to play big boy football here. If you guys want to keep complaining, we can take our ball and go home.
Yeah. Those threats before have worked. And everyone knows it. Look, I can see, we've talked about this before, David. I can see Greg Sankey's point, and I can see the Big 12 and ACC and everybody else's point. It's easy to say, well, hey, just win your way in, right? Just win your way in. And if you're so good as the SEC, you're going to have, multiple 10-win teams. Greg Sankey's going to say, oh, that's easy for you to say because you don't have to play Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M and Oklahoma's not going to be down forever, and Tennessee and Florida and Georgia. I almost left Georgia out and laid in Rising South Carolina. They're not on your team schedules. We don't get to play some of the dregs in your conferences.
100%. And by the way, I know you love when I go through soccer comparisons, but there's the playoffs of soccer, if you will, the Champions League. They have a similar scenario where the top leagues get more teams than the smaller leagues. That's just how it works. Because when you play in the English Premier League, you're going to be playing 1 through 10. Those teams can compete with anybody in the country, as opposed to the French League, which, by the way, is considered a high league, the League One. Maybe 1 through 3 can compete for a championship. So it's the same kind of conversation. You've got your top conferences in college football. That should be.
It's easier to swim across the pool than it is to swim across the English Channel. And the SEC, in this case, is the English Channel. I don't even think the Big Ten is, but even though the Big Ten had a great year last year, but I think
2 great years.
Yeah, I think because of more good teams were in the league than typically, but I think typically the SEC probably has double the lack of a better word, because I don't want to say elite, but powerful teams than the Big Ten even, and definitely more than the Big 12 and ACC. I mean, look at the ACC last year. SMU gets in, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but then they got exposed right away when they played Penn State.
Hey, I find this interesting, though. I don't remember which reporter put this. I think it's a guy that I don't typically agree with, but he said something interesting. He said that people giving Indiana such a hard time for making the playoffs forget that Indiana played Notre Dame closer than Georgia played Notre Dame.
Yeah, that means nothing. If you always play, those, hey, this score was this, and this game, this score was this, and this game, then you can always find a reason for somebody that was below 500 to be in over somebody that was probably a one-loss team. If you're just going to, because certain days, it reminds me of the guy when I think it was Ari Weisserman back in 2020 was saying, "Oh, A&M, they lost to Alabama by 24 points, and so they shouldn't be in because Ohio State would never lose to Alabama by 24 points." And then in the championship game, Ohio State lost to Alabama by 24 points.
Yep. And a year that they played less games, right? Didn't the Big Ten play less games that year?
Yes, and when A&M played Alabama, Alabama had Jaden Waddell playing, and the big offensive lineman who's now with the Eagles, who transferred from Florida State. I can't remember his name right now, but he was a good player at Florida State. He transferred in. He's a guard starting for the Eagles now. Even when A&M played them at their place instead of in a neutral site. So, you just what they call it, transitive properties. They don't work in sports.
Landon Dickerson.
Landon Dickerson. Yes, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll hit a break here. We'll check in with Ava Davis again because I'm sure she's got something good to share with us. OB, I know you're having a lot of seafood. We talked about it yesterday, but the moment you get back, maybe not the moment you get back, because I think you get back late on Thursday, but within 24 to 48 hours, I think you should be thinking about a lunch spot that can give you a lot of protein. That's just my suggestion.
Like 1775, for instance.
Well, there's only one choice in this conversation, and it is 1775.
I would agree with that. Yeah, if I'm going out in Bryan College Station area, especially if I'm at home and I want some barbecue and it's Thursday, Friday, or Saturday in the afternoon, because if you go too late, you're going to be sold out. It's too good. People get out there and they're going to gobble it up before you can gobble it up. So, 1775 is always the right answer.
Right answer. It's open Thursday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until they're sold out. Online ordering turns off at 10 a.m. What you can do is call them, 979-492-6241, or check out the website, 1775txbbq.com.
What's up, TexAgs? This commercial break is brought to you by my good friends over at Aggieland Chevrolet, the official automotive sponsor of TexAgs.com and me, Billy Lucci. Greg Gunn is the proud owner of Aggieland Chevrolet and invites you to visit the dealership to experience true Aggie hospitality. From their friendly staff to the experienced service team, Aggieland Chevrolet is TexAgs approved. Check out the dealership off of Highway 6 in Bryan or go to AggielandChevrolet.com and tell them Billy Lucci sent you by.
All right, we're back here on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in the Rollo Insurance Studio. And right now, as a reminder, the final segment of the program is brought to you by Double Dave's. That's at 10:50. But let's have caller number 12 right now, 979-693-1150. We're going to hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave's. They've been around Aggieland since 1984 with your favorite pizza. And, of course, those world-famous pepperoni rolls. Reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click on doubledaves.com and your favorites are on their way. The Buffy's Catering Hotline, OB is still with us live from Destin. OB, something I wanted to get into is Ross Dellinger reported yesterday something, I think Trev was asked about it. We can listen. Something that Billy's been talking about on this show for quite a while. On Ross's tweet says, Texas A&M has decided to fully fund every roster position, increasing its total scholarship allotment by more than 150. AD Trev Alberts says the Aggies joined Tennessee, Clemson, and some others in completely scholarshiping each sport. Billy did add to that tweet, just saying that he's been discussing it on TexAgs Live for quite a while, but it's going to give a competitive advantage in some sports, and baseball certainly stands out in that regard. Yeah, I've heard Billy talk about that. So, is it that kind of? I mean, nationally, and for I understand Ross tweeting that because that gets your attention. But yeah, I mean, it's something that TexAgs through Billy has reported before, and I think that just shows that A&M's ahead of the game on a lot of things, and they're very serious about supporting their athletic program. So once again, I think nationally they're figuring out, man, A&M is. They were not going to acknowledge it, but kind of because Tennessee and Clemson, I think, are doing it too. I think he said, and everybody else eventually will fall in line. But A&M is among the leaders, and I think that's a great thing. And like you said, Billy's pointed that out. So it's not like it's new news here, but it's the rest of the country's understanding that how serious A&M is. Well, let's talk about that competitive advantage because whoever is the coach, if it's Michael Early or somebody else. Texas is not doing that yet. They're going to take their time to scholarship all their sports, right? So, if it's a year of transition or if it's a year of rebuild, that does give the coaching staff a bit of an advantage to pick up some players. Oh, heck yeah. Hey, we're going to give you a full scholarship. This place over here is not. Okay. And NIL. So, yeah, it does. And I think that I never understood, especially in baseball, why baseball only got 11.7 scholarships. And look, I get it; it's not a revenue-producing sport, even at A&M, but it could be. I applaud that. I applaud what A&M is doing. If you're look, we all understand the difference in the revenue-producing sports and not, but if you're out there representing the university and why not put them on full rides? Let's listen to Trev talk about it yesterday as he kind of talked a little bit about this topic. Actually, disregard. The bite we have is about the season as a whole, so let's hold that for the next segment. I jumped the gun on that one. Let's hold that. We'll talk about A&M's athletic calendar as a whole, and then we'll specifically talk football because I know there were some great nuggets that you got from Mike Elko. Right now, we're talking about keeping water local. It's not just any water; it's about the water that's in Brazos and Robertson County. And right now, it's not just something that comes out of the tap of your sink. It's the lifeblood of everything we love about home. And out-of-state interests are eyeing our water here in the Brazos Valley, threatening our community's future, which is why I'd like you to consider keeping water local, joining this group of neighbors fighting to protect what matters most. If you care about this community, I know all of you do, keeping our water is something that's very, very important. It's about preserving the farms, our businesses, and the Aggie spirit that makes this place so, so special. Losing control of your water means losing control of your future. If you want to make a difference, head to keepwaterlocal.org, get involved, and let's keep our water right here where it belongs. Local is Keep Water Local. Welcome back into TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. OB still in Destin. OB, let's talk about a couple of themes that came up yesterday at SEC spring meetings when it comes to Texas A&M. And one of those was A&M's athletic calendar, which there had some high points. I know people don't run and recognize it, but there were some high points. I mean, softball regular season was fantastic. Unfortunately, we know how that ended. There was a lot of fading going on with some of the popular sports. But let's hear Trev Alberts yesterday kind of talking about it from his perspective.
I've been at this quote competition business for a long time, and there are days when you win and there are days when you lose, and there's some weekends that I walk around the house and man, we're really good at this, honey, and there are weekends when it feels like we just cannot win a thing. So that's just part of what you do. You fight every day, and we'll win some, we'll lose some. There were some disappointments. There's no doubt about it. But we got really good people. And
so, I mean, that's a fresh perspective. I think when you've been a long-time Aggie, right, it is easier to think about the failures than the high points, right? And this season, this year, feels like a failure because of lack of finishing in sports.
I don't think it was a failure. I agree that the lack of finishing was an issue. So I think we talked about this yesterday. I was arguing with some other guys or debating, and they were saying this is the worst season for A&M. And I said, no, maybe the most disappointing, right? And because we're all riding high in football until November, and unfortunately that's a common issue here. We, thought, a lot of people thought that A&M had I was talking to a guy yesterday from Georgia, said, man, I thought A&M had the best softball team in the country. And I said, yeah, a lot of us did too. And, you don't even, so it's that old bigger you are, harder you fall kind of thing. So you got big, and that's to be celebrated, but then the falls were so spectacular. And so if that defines, everybody has their own definitions of certain things. If that defines a bad year, okay, then absolutely. I'm not going to argue against it. But I think, like you said, there were good moments. It was just the falls were so tough to take and so painful that that it felt like a failure. But I think it was just the disappointment was so great. And I know I'm talking about, walking a fine line here, but to me, there's this difference between having a bad year and having a disappointing year. And quite frankly, maybe the disappointing year is the more difficult one to accept.
Well, look, every year you don't win the championship is disappointing, right? Like it was disappointing. But you could take a step back last baseball season and be like, it was disappointing they lost, an inning away from maybe winning at all, but it was a successful season. I think with some of the dramatic falls this past year, it's hard to say that. But if you take a few steps back, football was better in year one of Elko than it was in the final year of Jimbo, right? Those are facts, right? Basketball, I think, had a better, basketball did about what we thought, maybe not a step away from what we think they should have been, but like in the ballpark, they were in the ballpark, and baseball completely out of the ballpark.
Yeah, baseball was, again, the way we opened the show, it was just bewildering, even with all the injuries. Again, if you don't get into the College World Series, I understand, but because of the injuries, but not to get into the playoffs. So yeah, baseball was definitely a bad year and disappointing.
Yeah, no.
But again, I've said this before, David. Are we really at A&M at a place to say we're grossly disappointed in men's basketball because they only won a game in the NCAA tournament? I expected more. I did, but historically, you look at A&M historically, and just getting into the tournament is a success. So to win a game, it's hard for me to say that was a bad year.
The reason I think it was not a bad year, I would not say it was a bad year, but you had already done that, right? Mm-hmm. And you had that team coming back with some new pieces. You had a post player, right? Like that who could dominate, right? And the season that WED had come off, and then you replace Boots with a guy that you think maybe can carry that load in Zurich Phelps. So in your mind, and you did so well in the non-conference, you're like, this team's going to go places, right?
Yeah, I thought it was.
And then they didn't. So that's why, right? Like, I mean, they did. And then with 10 minutes left, you're cruising.
Yeah.
We're ready to pack our bags to Atlanta, Georgia, but that didn't work out that way.
But then I would come right back and say, once again, to my point is look at the history of A&M basketball. Yeah. And when you look, if I'm Duke and I win one game in the NCAA tournament, it's a travesty. But historically, if I get into the NCAA tournament at Texas A&M, it's a good year.
So I want to kind of go down the fade route a little bit more because I know Coach Elko was asked about that. And his quote was that TexAgs tweeted, it was a lot of things. One, we were in a situation we haven't been in before. We played back-to-back night games on the road in the SEC as a team that was being hunted, and I don't know that we handled that well. Did he go on to talk about how maybe they'll be better adjusted this season potentially because of it?
Well, he said before, that he thinks they're going to be, just more mature. They weren't mature enough to handle the situation last year. And quite frankly, he had also said before they had gotten away. They had masked some of their issues last year. We didn't realize until November, fully realize just what the problem was, how big a problem the secondary was. And then it got exposed. So, yeah, I'm not I had a team that hadn't been there before, didn't have the maturity to handle it, and then you got teams starting to figure you out and and all those things came to mind. All that said, should have beaten Auburn. No excuse for not beating Auburn.
No excuse. No, you're right. But it all goes on. And again, I don't want to point at injuries for everything because you can point at injuries for baseball. You can point at injuries for football. Injuries had a factor, and they weren't able to adjust. And then those issues that were there all season long, because we talked about a lot of those issues the entire year. It wasn't like they just showed up in November. We talked about them in October. Like, I remember having a show where, if you play like this against those teams coming up, you will lose. I remember doing that. But how you handle those injuries, how you handle success in November matters.
Well, look at the injuries that Notre Dame had. They lost Benjamin Morrison. They lost all those guys to the offensive line. And, they played for the national championship because they had, I guess, good guys ready to step up, but they also just were mature enough or whatever. Maybe part of it was they weren't playing when they were having the injury issues. Right, well, maybe you had more time to get guys up to speed because you weren't playing an SEC schedule. I'm saying, if Benjamin Morrison gets injured in the middle of the year and you have to bring a true freshman in to play that corner, maybe he gets hung out to dry a little bit more until he gets his footing if he's playing, at Georgia at that point, or an Alabama or an A&M or an LSU, as opposed to some of those weaklings in the ACC.
OB, also the Marcel Reed topic, which comes up every week because it's a long offseason, but Coach Elko did say that he felt he saw some strides in his throwing game this offseason, and that'll continue. What else about Marcel did you get from Coach Elko?
Oh, yeah, he was just, he was asked about what, because last week at the Brazos Valley, at what they call it, Coach's Night, he said that Marcel was much better. Well, why is he much better? And yeah, he talked about that, understanding the passing game even more, working hard on it, understanding the offense better. But I think he just there were still some vagaries about it, but it's clear that he feels pretty good about where Marcel is. And if Marcel makes strides, especially in reading the defenses, then I think you're going to see an A&M offense is going to be very explosive, because the biggest knock on Marcel. I've heard people say, well, what about this arm strength? I've seen the guy, throw the ball. Remember that game, first play of the second half against Arkansas? He threw the ball 50, 60 yards and barely overthrew Noah Thomas. So the arm strength, I don't think is an issue. And I think it's just, seeing that guy that's open and finding that guy that's open. And I think that's the most difficult part of playing quarterback, and you get better with it the more you play and the more you practice it.
Yeah, and that's something Stephen McGee has said on this show many, many times. All right, we'll hit a break here. Right now we're talking Daily Company, a family-owned and licensed insurance company that offers HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and generator services available 24/7. And these services include generators. They can repair those, maintenance. They can do installation to ensure preparedness for power outages, electrical. They can help you out with your wiring, your outlet repairs, your upgrades for safety and efficiency. Plumbing, by the way, leak repairs, clogged drains, water heater installation, maintenance to keep those pipes in top shape, and HVAC thermostat repairs, refrigerant leaks, furnace failures, and seasonal tune-ups. They serve this entire area. They serve College Station, Bryan, Houston, and Austin. Upfront pricing with no surprises. You can contact the Daily Company at 979-2060-2020. That's 979-260-2020, or visit them online at godaily.com to experience the daily difference. Saw a little glitch there. It's TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. The Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. OB is in Destin. He's on the Buffy's Catering Hotline, but we're going to go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center for commentary from the people. Ava, what are the people saying?
So one of our texts from Trey and Shiner, he says, baseball is a funny game. I think folks forget that we lost some very integral parts from last year's team. In addition, we had some key injuries that hurt us this season. Early should get one more season, which is something you can say, but everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. And it comes down to we have no control over that situation and who decides that.
Well, look, I'm not advocating either way. I understand if they were to move on, and I would understand why they would stay. But you can't get swept 4 times in an SEC season, and they got swept 4 times this year, OB.
Yeah, and once again, let me echo what I've been saying about that subject. Yeah, they had a lot of injuries, but to not make it to the playoff, did your injuries really add up to not being one of the 64 best teams or one of the 13 best in the SEC? And if you just don't lose a series and definitely not get swept to Missouri, we're probably not even having this conversation.
Let's get another message in. Jason Houston's got some thoughts.
He says, the funny thing to me is listening to Sankey and all the SEC ads this week, all of their solutions to fix college football, maybe the worst ideas we've heard of. How can such smart people not be creative?
I think because there's no real leader, OB. Like, without a leader, you just got a lot of people who just throw out ideas. It's a brainstorming session without like a figurehead at the top of the table saying, all right, this is how we're going to do it. There's a lack of leadership and a bunch of people that are kind of leaders in their little world, but they don't follow each other's lead.
Yeah, everybody's looking out for their own interests and not the interests of what's best for college football as a whole. I worry, and I really do worry about this. And they say, Trev Alberts says he didn't think this will come to pass, but I worry about we're going to get to the point where college conference games or conference champions, are they going to become obsolete? And I think that'd be terrible for college football. But at some point, the calendar is going to dictate things. And when you inevitably expand the playoff to 16 games, are you going to have enough of a window, hopefully. So I think, look, Greg Sankey's doing what he's supposed to do. He's looking out for the best interest of the Southeastern Conference. The guy, I can't even remember his name, in the Big 12. He's looking out for the best interest of the Big 12. So you have all these people looking out for the best interest for themselves and trying to convince everybody what's best for them is what's best for college football. And, that never works.
If they went to a 16-team playoff, do you see a scenario where the 4th best team in the SEC, if they got 4 automatics, wasn't worthy of being in a 16-team playoff?
I can't. You just have too many good programs that are invested mentally, emotionally, fully to winning. And I just can't imagine that out of 16, you wouldn't have 4. I would go back. I wonder how far you would have to go back and looking at final rankings and find less than 4 SEC teams in the top 16 of the final rankings.
Well,
I can't imagine, because usually you have more than that in the top 10.
But just for the sake of conversation, what if your 4th best team was 8-4?
Well, if your 4th best team is 8-4, then you probably have a lot of 8-4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that would tell me you'd have a lot of parity.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I do. This is what I do know. I think you can make a decision and move on, and you can try it for 3 years, as opposed to let's have a meeting about another meeting.
Oh yeah, that's such a frustrating thing here, because they can talk about all these things, but they can't actually do anything. And you hear Greg Sankey yesterday say, "Hey, as far as what we're going to do with the playoff, we need to have a decision." He couldn't remember it was by November 30th or December 31st, and then somebody from a TV station reportedly said, no, we got until like January 30th or 31st. So it even says that nobody really understands when you have to come up with a certain decision, or, what are the timetables to get things done. But that's how college sports and football in particular, that's how they've always done things.
They drive. That is so. I've said this before. They need Doge, right? They're so inefficient in college athletics in general. Like, it can't be this hard. It may not. The plan may not work, but whatever the plan is better than this, because this is no plan.
Yeah, and if they could come up with a way to ensure that a legitimate strength of schedule element is going to be brought into play, but that's what the SEC is worried about, because there are times, we discussed it today or earlier this week, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, I would have picked every one of them over SMU.
OB, they got about 10 seconds here. What else do you have on tap today?
Today's really finding out who's going to be available. Because I'm going to be looking back at some of the things that Elko and Trev said, and probably spin it into a column today, because you can't get everything in on that first day, and but then see what else is out there to find out.
Thank you, OB. Have a good one. All right, we'll come back. John Harris, TexAgs Live. And we're back. It's TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Hour number 2 of the program. Let's go straight to the Buppy's Catering Hotline. That's where we find the Professor John Harris from FootballTakeover.com and the Houston Texans sideline reporter, Texans TV, you name it. Johnny Harris, good morning, buddy.
Morning, David. How you doing?
I'm good, man. So let's start off with some of the stuff happening at SEC spring meetings. So Greg Sankey yesterday talked a little bit about that SEC had 13 teams finish within the top 25 of strength of schedule, and just feeling that some of his teams were unfairly left out, or you can make an argument for Alabama over this team, although you can always throw, well, you shouldn't lose to Oklahoma at the end of the year and shouldn't lose to Vandy, right? But when you think about the SEC strength of schedule and compare it to what other programs have to go through in other conferences, how much weight does that carry in a playoff environment where college football is considering going to 16 teams?
Well, I think the one thing about strength of schedule that's always kind of gotten me is it is very subjective. And I think what we get caught a lot of times is, well, that team is better than that team. Well, that team is better than that team, especially in college football, because teams don't play everybody. And it's not like the NFL where everybody is on the same rules, the same CBA, everything the same in the NFL. Everybody's got the same salary cap number. Everybody plays the same amount of games. Everybody plays the same amount of games that are in the division. Everything in the NFL is the same. The college football is not that. And so what we get a lot of times in college football is, well, this team is better than that team. Well, how do you know? Well, look at the talent of the team. Well, yeah, I've said this probably a million times. Just because the team is talented doesn't mean the team is better. It just means that team has a lot of talent. And to me, the team is actually worse if it's a team like Alabama and it's got all this NFL talent and it's losing to Vanderbilt, who does not have all the NFL talent. So which team is better? The one that ends up winning the actual matchup itself, or the one that has more draftable talent? And I think we get caught in that in college football. And so when you talk about strength of schedule, well, yeah, because, and typically it's the case. Typically it is the SEC is going to have more talent than everybody else. Are they better teams? In most cases, yes, but not always. And so who's to say that Ole Miss doesn't go to Notre Dame and get beat by 30 like Indiana does? I mean, we don't know. I don't think it would have happened. And I think what's our answer to all that? Our answer to all of that is, oh, well, Ole Miss is more talented than Indiana. But was Indiana a better team? And there have been years, and this, watch A&M football, where the better teams, David, didn't have the best talent. And so I think sometimes we conflate those two, and it gets kind of frustrating. Because there are a lot of teams that have a ton of talent. For Ohio State's always had a ton of talent, but they haven't always been the best team because they couldn't deal with adversity, couldn't beat Michigan. But when you put them in a 12-team playoff, they got enough opportunities to kind of right the ship and they go win a championship. And, of course, paid a lot of money to be able to do that. So I think strength of schedule gets to be kind of dicey, because where do we set our initial strength of schedule parameters? Where our strength of schedule is better than yours. Well, why do you say that? How do you say that? Is there a qualitative way that you can say that? Or is it just subjective because my eye tells me this? And I think that's where strength of schedule gets really kind of tricky, is because of that. And so also, when you're talking about college football too, what if you beat a ranked team at the beginning of the year? Because invariably there's always a top 10 team in college football that just dips and is out. They end up finishing 3-9, but you beat them at the beginning of the year when they were the number 5 team in the country, based on what? Objective polls. And so now all of a sudden you're going to take credit for beating team X that was number 5 in the country, even though they finished 3-9. So is that strength of schedule? Is it not? Well, at the time they were really good, but then all of a sudden they had 5 injuries over 2 weeks, and all of a sudden they're not as good. So I always think strength of schedule gets to be very, very tricky from that perspective, and how you factor that in to what you're doing. And I think that the hard part is, when you look at strength of schedule, you'd like to think, okay, well, we're factoring in non-conference games. Well, we get to a point where it's 16 teams in the playoff. Nobody's going to play non-conference games worth a damn. It's going to be all about where you finish in your particular conference, and mainly the SEC and the Big Ten, it sounds like. So I don't know that strength of schedule is going to even matter all that much. And so even if you do have big matchups that have been agreed to, 8, 9, 10 years ago, because you know how college football schedules work, those games might turn into glorified scrimmages in some sense because, we're basically worried about our conference, and, we know we can, withstand a couple losses, and we know we need to be good at this time of the year, whatever. I think it's a really tricky spot for college football right now because, when you factored in strength of schedule, and now let's say the SEC and Big Ten do this and you get that 4-4-2-2-1 model. Well, all of a sudden, a win over Florida State isn't as important as, beating Maryland. One's in the Big Ten, one's in the ACC. But Florida State might be a better program than Maryland, but you get more credit because you're beating a Big Ten team because of now kind of the tiered structure that's been created in college football. So I don't know. It's going to be really tricky how you factor all of that in. And then the other thing that I know I heard a lot of people say last year, in particular about Boise State, and this comes out of Boise State every year. And it's like, well, they don't play the teams that everybody in the SEC plays. I'm like, yeah, because Boise State's they're out in the Pac Northwest. They're out in Idaho. I mean, they don't have the opportunity to play LSU, Oklahoma, Texas every year. They don't. So what they have is no margin for error. And they lost one game to the number one team in the country by 3 points. To me, that's kind of satisfying margin for error. Alabama, for instance, had every opportunity to beat Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. It didn't. So it's like their margin for error is really big every year because they play in the SEC. But when you lose those games, that margin for error to me, it's gone. It's eliminated. So I think it's just tough because there's such an imbalance, and especially now at the NIL portal, there's such an imbalance between the Power Four conferences and everybody else. And even within the Power Four conferences, there's such an imbalance between the SEC, Big Ten, and ACC, Big 12. So I get what the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to do, but it's just going to create maybe an even bigger chasm between everybody else in college football. We already knew one was there, but I think it's going to become even wider, and it's going to make it to a point where I don't even think strength of schedule is going to matter at some point until you get to a point where the 12 or 13 or 14 game schedule, whatever it is, you're playing teams all the same ilk, like you do in the NFL, like you do in Premier League. You beat Brentford, it's the same as beating Liverpool. And where do you have that? Well, you have in the SEC and Big Ten. So we're going to have to live life eventually where it's SEC and Big Ten and everybody else is playing for third place.
Are you worried about the future of conference championship games? Do they matter to you? Yep. Do you you just brought up the Prem as an example. It matters to win your league. It also matters to win in the Champions League, which are two different things. So how does college football kind of get to that where, hey, winning your conference championship is a huge deal. There should be maybe even incentivized, but there's also the playoffs, which are a different animal.
Yeah, they tried it last year, and it completely backfired because the way they had it set up last year, they were rewarding those conference champions, and then all of a sudden, all of them lost in the first round of playoff, and everybody's like, "What are we doing?" And then, of course, you're going to overreact to whatever happens in the first year instead of letting it play out a little bit. Like, okay, let's play this out, see how it goes. Let's reward conference champions. I think, and this is where, and it's funny because in the NFL, this kind of was brought up too about, well, once you're winning the division just gets you a ticket in. It doesn't give you a ticket to the VIP section. And I think in the NFL, the owners looked at it and said, no, we want winning a division to matter. I don't know that it's seen that way in college football. Especially as it stands to the playoff. I think now it's just, okay, you've gotten a ticket into the dance by winning your really tough conference. And by winning your really tough conference, the reward isn't a guaranteed bye week. Your reward is potentially a bye week. May not be. It's just you get in. I I guess I'm okay with that and how that would go. But I think conference championship games are going to go by the wayside in due time, because there's going to come a time where, a team goes into that game and they're the number one team in the country. They're sitting on a bye. All they got to do is finish undefeated. They get knocked off. Now all of a sudden they got to go play a first round game, even though it might be at home. They got to go play a first round game. Now they get to the second round where they probably should have been all along. They didn't have to play a conference championship game. They played an extra game. They're beat up, all that kind of stuff. So I do think conference championship games are going to end up dying on the vine at some point because of what it could cost a team. 1 60-minute game. It's like last year, SMU Clemson, I think, is a great example. Clemson really, honestly didn't deserve to be in a playoff. It didn't. But it won the right game at the right time to be able to get an opportunity to go to playoff. And SMU, you could argue, to me, the argument wasn't really SMU Indiana. It was more, did Clemson deserve to be in the playoff based on how they had played in 2024 versus other teams that were probably more talented and would probably take more advantage of the opportunity? That, to me, was kind of the question. But because emphasis was placed on the conference championship game, Clemson goes in. So again, it's a matter of using the championship games. You kind of have a quantitative element that can put a team in a playoff. But if you take it out, you might end up getting the best 12 to 16 teams possible. I don't know. I just think that the way it's going, I love championship games. I've been to many of them. And most of them that I've been to have been, all out brawls. I went to the 2012 SEC championship game in Atlanta, and it was Georgia and Alabama for the opportunity to play Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. Either one of them would have beat Notre Dame by 40. And they go in this knockdown, drag-out brawl, and Georgia doesn't even get a chance. And Georgia's basically the second best team in the country. And it's like, how do you make that fair? Well, then they increase the playoff numbers, and here we are. But I think the difference in subjective, versus quantitative gets to be very tricky in college football. The good thing, if you're in the SEC, is you may not get this, hey, we get 4 teams mandatory. You're going to get 4 or 5 teams, whether it's 12, when it goes to 16, you'll get 5 at a minimum. I don't think there's going to be any question, because the SEC is always going to have that reputation. It would take years, 8, 10, 12 years to go, the SEC sort of lost a step. I saw a tweet yesterday. Oh, the SEC didn't win a championship for the last 2 years. Now they're grousing. I'm like, I mean, that's the standard the SEC has set. So I don't worry about it from the SEC standpoint. What I do worry about is, in the Big 12, is there going to be a year where they have 3 teams that are pretty good, but they're only going to get 2 teams in a playoff? Now, how probable is that? I don't know. But I don't think there should be worry from the SEC side, because if you get in, let's say you don't get in as the number 17 team when we go to 16, well, guess what? You probably didn't deserve it anyways. I just feel like as you add more teams to the playoff, your argument gets lesser and lesser. Now, sitting at 12, did Ole Miss, South Carolina, those 2 have a beef? Yeah, but it was muted compared to teams that finished 5th when we had a 4-team playoff. That team at number 5 could have been and was really good. Team 13 was good, but flawed. So the more teams we add, the less that argument becomes. Like in the NCAA basketball tournament on that Monday, everybody's crying about Creighton not getting in as Team 69 or whatever it is. It's Team 69. Like the argument lasts for like 2 seconds. When you have the number 5 team not getting into a 4 team, or you didn't have the number 3 team getting into just a BCS 1-2 game, okay, that argument can be loud. As we move on, the argument gets to be a little bit muted as far as I look at it. You've probably got the best team in that mix, because really, and David, what's the number? Every year, probably max 12 teams, max, can win a national championship in college football, max. So as long as you get those teams in, I feel like you've probably done a good job, whether it's 16, 20, or 24, whatever they're putting into the playoff, once they eventually settle on a good number.
Johnny, who do you think had a better year in college football last year? Georgia or Texas? And I'm going to give you just Georgia beat Texas twice, right? They won the conference championship. Texas went further. Who had the better year?
I mean, gosh, that's such a hard question to answer, David,
Right.
because, I do value winning a conference championship, and it's hard to look at Georgia. They lose Carson Beck, they lose their starting quarterback in that game against Texas in the SEC championship. Then Texas gets Clemson and Arizona State to start this thing, and Georgia gets a hot Notre Dame team. So, I mean, sometimes it's all, we face this kind of in the NFL. Like every year you look up and the Baltimore Ravens are the hardest team to play. Like nobody wants to play them in the playoff. But then in the division round, they step all over themselves. Well, at the end of the year, you go, who is the better team? Team that won a championship or the Baltimore Ravens? Well, if you match them up in a 60-minute battle, it's probably the Ravens. But they would keep making mistakes or somebody would get hurt and they just, wouldn't have an opportunity to win that game. And Georgia had the opportunity of getting somebody hurt. And that being the key guy in Carson Beck. So in the end, they're almost even to me because Texas did make it further. They were what on the 5-yard line going into, tie or take the lead against Ohio State. And one mistake, and all of a sudden it's a 2-score lead. I mean, they're that close to going to the national championship game, but they didn't get to the national championship game. And so I think that's what holds me back and says, I think Georgia with 2 wins over Texas and an SEC championship when they matched up head to head, and they both basically essentially, I mean, it's 1 round difference, I guess. I would feel like Georgia had the better year. Although, David, I would think based on expectations, I feel like Georgia probably didn't meet them. Texas got closer to their expectations. But Georgia didn't meet them because of one reason. That's because they lost Carson Beck. And that basically killed their opportunity against Notre Dame. So it's kind of an asterisk, but I think Georgia had probably the better season. But again, subjective, just depending on how you value championships head to head, and then how far you got in a playoff situation. I think if Texas got in a championship game, I would have said, okay, Texas.
Last thing for you, you mentioned Carson Beck there. How do you think it's going to go for him at Miami and also Gunnar Stockton at Georgia now that he's the guy?
I'm not as bullish on Gunnar Stockton, but he doesn't have to do a ton. He just kind of has to keep the train on the tracks. And I feel like Carson Beck's got a good opportunity. Shannon Dawson, good offensive coordinator. He's going to force Carson to get the ball out. And I think that helps him. But, a lot of Miami's offense last year was Cam Ward creating. Cam created a lot. Miami's budget has gone up for their entire roster. So the roster is better. The receivers are good. The offensive line will protect him probably better than Georgia's did. And they're playing ACC, and he's playing ACC schedule as opposed to playing, through the hard part of the SEC. So I'm not as bullish on Gunnar Stockton, though. I mean, again, he had done a whole heck of a lot. He's probably had about the same number of passes that Arch Manning had at University of Texas. So, kind of hard to say, but who's got more hype? Well, we all know the answer to that question. But I think Gunnar will do fine. But I'm not totally convinced that he ends up being the guy the full year at Georgia. And maybe this ends up being one of those years where Georgia sort of steps back because they end up moving in a young quarterback that's going to take over. And eventually this year just sets the table for 2026. But I think in the end, I would feel pretty confident Carson Beck's going to do a solid job at Miami. But I don't think he ends up being All-American or a Heisman Trophy candidate. I think he might be first team All-ACC, but that's maybe it.
Johnny, I appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yeah, man. Off to OTAs. See you next week, buddy.
See you, bro. John Harris on TexAgs Live. We'll hit a break. We'll come back. Pat Henry will join us to talk about the NCAA West Regionals, that and more. Right now, we're talking Bird Dog. Maximize your ranch's potential with Bird Dog. They are revolutionizing ranch management. This Aggie-owned and operated company doesn't just connect hunters with premium hunting experiences. They also take care of your land, right? They'll find you those tax benefits you haven't thought about. Some of their landowners are making an extra $100 to $500 per acre of land. That's part of what they do. But they also connect you with some awesome hunting opportunities. They'll set up all the logistics for you. All you do is go to their platforms like an Airbnb for hunting and figure it out. Also, If you're into fishing, they'll take care of you as well. I had a great fishing week or weekend with my good friend there, Ben Sweat, who runs the fishing side of things, also marketing for them. Got to go to Port O'Connor and had a wonderful, wonderful time. They can set that all up for you. Again, Bird Dog is doing it all for the outdoors. The website is birddogit.com. Again, that website, birddogit.com. Check it out. And we're back. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. Typically, this is where we talk to Pat Henry, and that is brought to you by the Brazos Running Company, your local Aggie-owned specialty running store, your local source for Viore athletic and duck camp apparel in Century Square, below the Star Cinema Grill in College Station. So this is what I can tell you. They're in the middle of trying to figure out the event itself. They're in a weather delay, originally scheduled for 10 a.m., but there's lightning in the area. Richard Zane came in here. He's been in communication with Texas A&M Athletics, and they will run as long as the lightning is gone. So we do have that. But they got to have the lightning clear up before they do any of that. But I did want to tell you what it was supposed to be. The hammer throw was supposed to go first off at 10 a.m. At 2:30, javelin was supposed to go. But here's what we have for right now. 4:30, the long jump, Kabai Dawson, Mason Mangum, and you got 5:30 pole vaulting, Alexander Solovev, Jack Mann, and Leo Bowen. The track event starting at 6 p.m. You've got the 110 hurdles with Jaqueline Scott. 6:30 p.m. 1500 with Luca and Cooper. 7 p.m. the 100 Ernest Campbell. 400s Ahmad Robinson, Sam Hatib, and there's several others out there. The 800 Sam Whitmarsh, Kamar Ferguson, Cade Nordis. You also have at 8:20 the 400 meter hurdles. And that is with Bryce McCrae and Jaqueline Scott. 8:45, the 200s, Mason Mangum and Blake Holland. And that's just for today. We'll have tomorrow's event information a little bit later on. Let's check in at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center because Ava Davis has got just a little bit of a recap of what they did in the SECs.
Yes, A&M put a dominant showing on at the SEC Championship as the women finished second and the men finished fourth. As of right now, A&M sits elite standard nationally as the women are in second and the men are in fourth.
So that's how they finished a couple weeks back, and so hopefully it sets up for them to do fantastic this week. Obviously, these are not the best working conditions, right? Like you would absolutely want it to be a much drier experience for them. Hopefully the lightning goes away, the rain stops, it dries up, and they can have a quality race for all the participants there. I know Coach Henry's probably running around ragged right now, so we hope that he can get it done, as he's gotten it done many, many times. Here's a text that came in. In fact, we'll go back to Ava from a 361, just talking a little bit about the baseball situation, because I know there was some messages on the YouTube page about, have we talked baseball? Yeah, we've talked a lot of baseball, no doubt about it. Ava, if you can read that text, please.
The text says, I understand that baseball is baseball. I liked the early hire, but with this roster, even the injuries, they should be in the top half of the SEC. To get swept in 4 series and 1 being at home against Missouri, that's unacceptable. Also, these people saying that this is that this was a different team than last year. Well, Trader Slosh changed his roster and they won. I feel like we just didn't have a coach that pushed the team to be better. I feel that the difference between a hitting coach and a head coach. Early might end up a great head coach, but we can't wait.
Look, I can't disagree with a lot of what he said. Unacceptable to lose to Missouri at the end of the year. You're exactly right. A terrible start to the season. It's not supposed to be an on-the-job training experience when you're Texas A&M. And we had the benefit of hindsight, but 98% of us, fake stat for you, I think would have all made the early hire at the time. So here's questions I will ask you. How did you feel about him entering the Texas series? I use that example. If you didn't have the Missouri series, how would you feel, right? And I feel like for the most part, they played really good baseball mid-season on. But the reality of the situation is the overall product suffered. It was not a good year. It was not a good year. And I like Coach Early. I like him a lot. And sometimes our personal relationships, can sway the way you look at things. I like the guy. I think he's a good man. And I think his players loved him. And unfortunately, it did not work out this year. And I don't know if he's going to get another opportunity or not. But I do like the man. And I can separate that from the results. The results weren't good enough. Now the question is, can Trev and Texas A&M give him another year to see if he can figure it out? Is it fair to get rid of him after 1 year? Or are we such in a results-driven business, which we are, that you have to cut bait earlier than expected? Those are all the questions that Trev's going to have to deal with. And I hope he actually has a great meeting with Coach Early, hears his perspective of why it didn't work out and why it would, and make his decision based on everything, and not a sports talk host or a fan making the decision, somebody who can look at all the information and objectively make the right call for the program. Seems like, if you want to read how that conversation with Trev yesterday went, it seems like it's trending in one direction, especially if you read what national analysts are saying. But I think one way or another we'll know the future of A&M baseball here over the next week or so. All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back. Trisha Ford will be in studio. Looking forward to talking to Trisha. I know it was a very, very difficult end of the season, but there was so much that we highlighted and so much fun that we had during the year, only to fall short at the end. If your wheels have fallen off or you have been damaged by potholes, if your wheels have fallen off, I don't know how you're driving, by the way. If your wheels have been destroyed by potholes and curbs or mediums, go see the experts at Brazos Valley Wheel Repair. Don't replace the damaged ribs. Repair them. The experts at Brazos Valley Wheel Repair have over 2 decades of experience, and they always make sure that your wheels return to perfectly safe working condition. And they have experience in repairing everything from the minor curb rash to polishing to much more complex jobs like bent or cracked rims. Don't let anyone else tell you that your wheels need to be replaced. Let the experts there at Brazos Valley Wheel Repair give you a free evaluation where you can save hundreds of dollars. If your tires need to match your new custom rims, the Brazos Valley Wheel Repair people can help you find that as well. They can give you a new tire quote, and if any other place sells that tire for less and they can't beat it, they'll hand you a $20 bill. It is Brazos Valley Wheel Repair, offering free interest financing and even offers first responders, active military, and veterans 10% off with ID. The website to go is bvwheelrepair.com or find them in person at 508 Burnett Street in Bryan. It is Brazos Valley Wheel Repair. Good morning, everyone, and welcome into TexAgs Live. If you were wondering, Kane Akeley's in studio. Trisha Ford had to leave. We're going to get her next week because we were off air for a little bit.
Yeah.
Power outages around the area, and when the power outages hit us, it takes a little bit of time to reboot, and we got hit by 2
different power
We
outages.
were, seconds away from interviewing Trisha Ford the second time we were going to try to interview her. Seconds away. And we got hit by another one, KK.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I know. I was like looking outside because is it really that bad? And it just kind of looks like a light little sprinkle, but
But there's lightning in the area.
They want to prevent Trisha from coming on. That's just, the weather is just,
Well, she
the
told me
weather is like Athens, how it was in Athens. They're just preventing.
Well, she said she'll be here next week.
Yes.
So we'll do it next Wednesday. We'll catch up with her. You've been following the team all season long. You got a few minutes to talk to her in the lobby. I talked to her briefly. I feel like everything I would expect from Trisha is what I got in that lobby. Still upset about what happened, but gonna figure it out.
Yeah, and it's tough because you watch them have one of the best regular seasons that Aggie softball has had in a very long time, and then just to go out the way they did. She was saying she would tell us this. She hasn't watched a lot of softball because it just still stings. And yeah, it's just a hard one to swallow, knowing you don't even lose 10 games in the regular season, and then you go on the first round. It's not going to be easy to swallow at all. And I know for future years she's going to be so incredibly motivated by that.
So the team will look different next year, and we'll talk to her about it next week. But how aggressive do you think they'll be in the portal?
Yeah, so I was kind of looking at it today, just historically what they've added in the portal or how many they've added. So last year, 6 additions, the year prior, 5 additions, the year prior, 6 additions. So I feel like that's generally where she likes to land. She has 3 incoming freshmen that will be pretty good additions as well, but none at pitcher. So I expect that with Emily Kennedy leaving to be a target point, obviously, and there's been some big names that have entered. LSU's Sydney Burzon being one of them. She's been ultra successful there. So I expect them to hit the portal probably in that like 5 to 6 range, is just, going off of history is what I expect. And they did lose quite a few seniors. So Coco, you're looking to replace Allie and Kramer in the outfield, and Mac Barbara, Ojo Johnson, who was hurt late down the stretch, but she was a great catcher for them. So expect them to make some additions soon.
In the thread that you were talking softball, what is the mood/vibe? Because I know overall A&M vibe is like disappointed with the totality of the season. Some of those folks didn't watch softball until the very end, right? So which is fine. They'll take every fan that they can get. But how's the softball purist, the softball fan feeling right now?
Yeah, I was telling someone this. I feel like Callie Garner upstairs, because I've watched probably every game this team has played in, and gotten very used to the style of play and the momentum and things like that. So when you're watching for the first time and this is the team you're seeing, and you're like, what? This was supposed to be the number 1 team. It's probably hard to grasp. But I said this in the thread. They looked unrecognizable in that first Liberty game. I mean, I don't know injury-wise, and this is something I would be curious to ask her about, injury-wise, if they're like sicknesses, things like that, if they just simply overlooked the opponent. But I was giving credit to Dot Richardson and Liberty because they prepared their butts off for Emily Kennedy, just to a ridiculous extent. Their ace threw 400 pitches. Your ace could barely finish some innings. Yep. Maya Perez went 2 for 9. Their star player went 5 for 9. So at the end of the day, it was a matter of stats, and it was a really tough ending. But I know she's going to be ultra motivated to go get the production that the seniors had, go make that up, and then some.
Thank you, KK.
Of course.
All right, when we come back on TexAgs Live, and I know we have about a minute till we have to hit a break, we're going to have Jason Howell. We'll do a couple segments with him. Kendall Rogers will join us at 10:35. Look, there's a lot of storylines. You know the obvious ones, and you know what Kendall's reported. So we'll chit-chat a little bit about that, the direction of Aggie baseball, and where they go from here. But right now, if you're looking for a reason to move back to Aggie land or are already living in Aggie land, and you're looking for a great opportunity, a great place to go work, you should check out the Association of Former Students. Wonderful place to go work at. Great people across the street. They're just right over there. And if you want to work in an awesome environment, they are the premier alumni association serving that Aggie network. They play a part in every Aggie story from Howdy to Here. Don't miss opportunities to help out the association with some awesome marquee events that they held throughout the year. We're talking Howdy Socials, Aggie Reading Day, class reunions, and everything in between. Don't miss an opportunity to do that because it's just such a great event to be a part of all these events. Join a team that exemplifies those Aggie core values of excellence, integrity, leadership, loyalty, respect, and selfless service, all in support of that worldwide Aggie network. If you're interested in joining the team or sharing with someone that would be a great fit, please visit tx.ag/association jobs to apply and get more information on each position. It is the Association of Former Students. Jason Howell on the other side is TexAgs Live. Welcome back into TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. The weather storm can't hold me down, ladies and gentlemen. It's now time for Recruiting Country, brought to you by American Momentum Bank, and we go to the Buppies Catering Hotline. That's where we find our friend Jason Howell. Jay Howell, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. I was wondering what happened. I was on the Zoom, got the phone call. Now, hey, I'm ready to go. as always. We're
Well,
gonna fight through this storm.
Hey, so I'm gonna give some props out to our team here. First off, I felt like a husband who doesn't know what to do when the wife has a baby, and he's just like kind of standing there like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know how to help. That's how I felt in the back, because the moment we went off air, I saw like people that I didn't even know worked here running downstairs. One of our owners, Josh Olsey's in there. We got a screwdriver, and he's got like a switchblade, and he's fixing things. It was like a NASCAR pit crew. Everybody was like working, and I'm just watching like, oh, this is nice. I don't know how to do any of this. So it was nice to see the team all put it together.
Like you said, like a pit crew, just running everywhere. It's a fire drill, and it doesn't surprise me. That's TexAgs. All hands on deck.
All hands on deck. And, speaking of all hands on deck, yesterday we made the executive decision on the air to have Jason Howell do Recruiting Country. I didn't even have to text you. You responded because you listened in real time.
Hey, I mean, this is you guys have a great product on TexAgs Live. I get to be a part of that on the regular, and I got to support the company and be a team guy. I try and be a part of the conversation as much as possible. And yeah, man, I wouldn't miss an opportunity to chime in. I was hoping to get it in before you got off the air, so you could actually respond. But yeah, I understand too, not having the phone out, not being in tune with attached to your phone and all that stuff while you're on the air too. So.
Well, Jason, interestingly, like about 3 or 4 months ago, I made the change on my phone that during broadcast hours, I have all alerts off except for like my parents or my wife. And I try to check my phone during breaks. I try to, but because there was a point that I would be like looking at my watch because it would go off like, and it would be just like a random spam email or like a random phone call. So it was like constantly like taking me off my game. So I actually did make that change, but then I miss text messages like yours. All right, let's get into some of the ranking updates, because I know that you guys went through it and made some adjustments. And let's start off with number 1, Jermaine Bishop, the number 1 2026 in the 5 stars. What is he, number 5 on the list? But he's the top Aggie. Is that correct?
No. Okay, so Jermaine Bishop is the number 1 overall.
Number 1, excuse me. Sorry, yes. Sorry. Jonathan Hatton's the number 1 Aggie.
Jonathan Hatton, and the number 1 back in the state of Texas. And new number 1. But on Jermaine Bishop, Texas A&M has been part of that recruitment for a long time. It came down to Texas A&M, Texas, and Houston pretty much there towards the end. But this ranking has nothing to do with this college choice. We've been a huge fan of Bishop's game since we started the ranking process, and just an all-around athlete, a lockdown cornerback with explosive ability, with the ball in his hand on the offensive side of the ball, recruit as an athlete, and but as far as Jonathan Hatton goes, you're talking about a 10,600 meter guy with a couple 1,000-yard seasons under his belt at one of the state's top programs in the San Antonio area, and just a big back, gets downhill in a hurry, and we love what he brings to the table. This is a every down SEC back that brings a complete game to the table.
With the profile that Hatton brings and his ability to be just a game changer, do you see him maybe being somebody that could tip the scale with others because of his commitment to A&M?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been in the ear of some guys. He's highly respected with among the recruits out there, the prospects in the state of Texas. I think that's a guy that a lot of prospects in the state look to, and he is one of the top committed prospects in the state. I think right now he would be there's Bishop, Henderson, and Hatton, and Hatton would be right up there with the best of the best. Like I said, he's a top 5 prospect, and he's a bell cow kind of guy that can that brings a lot to the offense.
Jason, let's talk a little Legend Bay for a moment. I know he has his top 5, and he's, I think, been moved to number 18. A&M sees him as an athlete. Some others are recruiting him as a quarterback. What does he want? Where does he land?
Well, this ranking is based on him being solely viewed as an athlete. We've always had him slotted as an athlete, a guy who can play multiple offensive positions, can project to defense as well, kind of in that Terry Bussey mold, right? And he does have that quarterback in him. That's what he's played throughout his high school career, and that is, Duke, West Virginia. Those are schools that are recruiting him as a quarterback prospect. And before, in past ranking cycles, he wanted to be. It was very clear quarterback is what he wanted to do. And over time, and as he's seen his recruitment and he's gone to some of these camps and he's worked at different positions, he's much more comfortable with being viewed as an athlete. He's very open to that, and that's a big reason why he's kind of moved up. I know with me, part of my ranking, like especially when it comes to a guy who's switching positions or being viewed at multiple positions, you can't just go, he's a better linebacker than he is a running back, and then expect if that kid has no desire to be that other position. To me, that's a red flag, I will knock somebody in the rankings for that. But Legend being open and being excited about those opportunities as an athlete and being recruited for multiple positions, like I said, A&M, think more like a Terry Bussey, and you'll get an idea of what he's capable of at A&M.
Does A&M feel pretty good about where they are with him?
Yeah, they're right there in the thick of it. I would say they're at the tip top of that list. Of course, you've got Tennessee, like I mentioned, West Virginia and Duke, who are really going hardcore, especially with the quarterback option. I think Ohio State's in there as well. But A&M is right there. A&M gets the final visit, I guess, in the summer with that June 20th weekend. So they get a chance to end his summer visits with a big push. So absolutely, I think A&M's in a strong position. I think he visited twice this spring. So since being offered in March, he was able to get out to Aggieland a few times and check it out and get pretty familiar with A&M. So A&M's in a strong spot there.
So looking through some of the rankings and maybe some of the changes, is there anybody who's kind of moved up the rankings or maybe debuted that maybe A&M would consider taking a look at?
Well, one that they've recently offered is Chance Collins out of Mansfield Timberview. I got to see him this fall, and he's a guy that's played multiple positions. I actually saw him a couple of years ago working at receiver with a trainer, a friend of mine, and I got to see him move, and I was like, okay, got to get more information on this guy. I took his headshot and everything, and then as he's kind of grown and progressed this fall, saw him play both sides of the ball for a really exciting Timberview defense that's known for its physicality and their defensive back play, and then he was one of the leading receivers as well. I think he earned Male Athlete of the Year in that Timberview program. And this spring, he took a really big step. He was part of 3 state qualifying relay teams, and I think he ran the 4x1 and 4x2. May be mistaken, but he was part of those relay state qualifying relay teams there at Timberview, and he's a guy to keep an eye on. He visited in in the spring a couple times. He visited in the fall and recently picked up his offer towards the end of spring. He'll be in town that June 20th weekend as well. And as a safety prospect, I know that's one that Ish has been keeping an eye on for the Aggies, and he brings a lot to the table as he kind of vaults up the charts a good bit. Landon Barnes is a defensive end that's seen a flurry of offers. Texas A&M hasn't offered him yet, but he's a teammate of KJ Ford's at Duncanville. He is, he doesn't have quite the skins on the wall as KJ, but he's one of these guys that brings a tremendous frame and upside as well. So he's coming from a strong program in Duncanville. He's a guy I would keep an eye on, and go out there to Jonathan Hatton's stomping grounds at Cibolo Steel. Julian Hugo is a defensive end that just recently committed to Arizona State. That brings a lot to the table as far as measurables and, again, being part of a strong program known for a stout defense. He's been a multiple-year contributor and standout out there for the Knights, and could be a guy to keep on the line or on the watch list over the next few months.
Jason, am I right? 2 5-stars in the state of Texas?
Yeah, we tend to go slow with the 5 stars. We've had Jermaine Bishop and Keyshawn Henderson as our 5 stars in the state since I think it was last rankings update. So after the season, we decided to go ahead and put those 2 guys in as 5 stars. But you want to bring those. We like to elevate instead of take away. So you want to be giving out those 5-star statuses. It's kind of a tricky game. You don't want to give it too early and then feel like you want to take it away later because somebody's performance doesn't quite live up to the billing. So it's something we're very careful with throughout the rankings process. But those 2 guys have shown to be big-time playmakers regardless. I think somebody on the board asked about the story with Keyshawn Henderson. He's committed to Houston. He committed early. Houston was one of the first to I'll wrap this up, but yeah, Houston was one of the first to actually recruit him as a quarterback. He was viewed as an athlete, played receiver and safety as well. And last year he took a major leap on the field as a quarterback, and you've seen it reflect in his recruiting as well. And Houston's got their hands full trying to hold on to him.
Well, Jason, when we talk about these rankings, we can also talk about commits and the 5-star Aaron Gregory. Just people sometimes forget that dude is a 5-star and a half.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal this, last fall, just put together a tremendous season. A&M was able to lock in on him early, and a tremendous relationship there between his family and the Texas A&M staff that goes back to their days at Duke. So just getting his commitment locked up, and after that LSU game, and then seeing what he's done this spring on the camp circuit, on the 7-on-7 circuit, he's just been a tremendous playmaker. I actually had somebody tell me he's an even better safety than he is a receiver, which is ridiculous in my mind. But I mean, he's phenomenal. He's been he runs fantastic routes. There's a video from the Rivals camp, I guess, that recently happened out there that was just him routing guys up and making catch after catch and showing off his hands. Big athletic prospect. Holman Wiggins has done a phenomenal job there with that recruitment, and we decided as a staff that he had earned it in our eyes, whether and that would be whether he was committed to A&M or not. He's a 5-star prospect, and it may not have happened with one of the services yet, but I look for that to change. I got a feeling that'll end up going across the board with the different ranking services, and we felt like it was a needed move and a well-deserved honor for Ann.
Jason, looking at the 27 class, A&M has offered the new number 1, Caden Scott, the offensive lineman. Talk to us about him.
Well, I think at the National Combine in San Antonio for the Navy All-American Bowl, that's where I first got a chance to see him. Ronnie had gotten a chance to see him as he's taken visits to A&M throughout the fall, and the kid looks like $1 million. 6'6", 6'7", 290 pounds, just lean, long, athletic, moves really well. He's got a basketball background, and he's got a tremendous upside. He's just scratching the surface, but watching him go through drills, watching the tape, and again, all these updates, when we're doing this in the spring, it's based off what we've seen in spring ball, how they've grown, developed, and all that stuff. But it also brings you back to the tape. And when you watch what he's done, he did this last fall, combined with what we saw at camps and different venues where we saw him. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. He's a guy that's going to be one of the top prospects in the class. If he, whether it's number 1 or somewhere right there, he's going to be highly regarded. A&M, Texas, all the schools in the region are already all over him, and I know Coach Cushing is a guy that's made him a priority.
And looking at the 28s, 11 Aggie offers. Talk to us a little bit about that group.
Yeah, it's fun to see those young guys. Like we said, there's 11 on that watch list. You got Des Bryant Jr. You got J.D. Edwards, who's the younger brother of K.J. Edwards, top 2026 prospect for A&M. You've got James Foster, who is one of the top athletes, who quarterback, safety, DB, and is doing some big things at Lancaster. Dylan Mitchell, I want to say he may have run 10:08 100-meter this spring, and he's just scratching the surface. A lot of ties to Texas A&M, but yeah, they dot all the areas of the state. You got DFW, Houston, East Texas. Jaden Herndon, write the name down. Big standout receiver at Longview as one of the only freshmen to play varsity ball out there for the Lobos. And his first offer came from Malcolm Kelly, who's a Longview legend, and that people were talking him up, as the next Jalen Hale, who's out there at Alabama doing his thing. So big upside receiver. Got a lot of growth there, but a lot of promise there as well.
All right, we'll head a break here. We'll come back with more with Jason Howell on Recruiting Country, brought to you by American Momentum Bank. Right now, Milliken Reserve is a farm-to-table community. They are in College Station. They got homes, they got trails, they got farms, they got wide open spaces, and they have a mission to build a healthy community around nature. You don't have to live there. You can just go and enjoy the outdoors, from the hiking, the biking, the canoeing, the kayaking, the equestrian trails. They have it all. It's a great place to come together with your family. Throw the football with your kids, just enjoy being out, climb a tree, whatever, fly a kite. Whatever you like to do outdoors, you should do it there at Milliken Reserve. You don't have to live there. But if you do decide to live there, they have awesome neighborhoods. The Creek, these are homes on 10-plus acre wooded estates. You've got the Hollow in a private and gated community. And you've got the meadows that are responsive to their natural surroundings. You can learn more about the neighborhoods or everything going on at Milliken Reserve at millikenreserve.com. That website again, millikenreserve.com. We are back. It's TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is still recruiting country, brought to you by American Momentum Bank. Jason Howell is on the Buppies Catering Hotline. Jason, we've kind of gone through some rankings. Just overall, what do you think about expectations for this 2026 class?
Well, last week in my three things, I said I feel like A&M will end up with a top 5 to 10 nationally ranked recruiting class, top half of the SEC, and I think that's going to be more 3 to 5 than than beyond. And I'd be surprised. I know we've talked about in-state recruiting, offensive line in particular, as big questions right now and concerns with A&M, but I'd be surprised if those are still concerns by the end of August. So those are three things kind of at the top of my list right now. And as you look at the landscape heading into June, July, and August, where I see A&M's position themselves with several prospects across the country, and I think you'll see some momentum build over the next couple months.
How much of a talking point is the uncertainty of the future with the House settlement still, which, by the way, is still not done, and not knowing what the financial structure could be for the future? Is that even a talking point for the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th?
Right now, it's mainly just get in there and try and get the best guys you can, and recruit as many top-end recruits as possible, and fill out the roster that is right now. You can't worry about the unknown, and you cross those those problems when you get there. And right now, it is what it is, and you recruit to the environment you're in. And then when those circumstances change, you make those adjustments. And right now, I think you have some ideas, but you don't have a whole lot of certainties in that department. As you heard Mike Elko talk about it yesterday, we're thinking that things may change midstream before the season. And how do you deal with that? You just you work in the environment you're in until it's not the environment you're in, and then you make those adjustments.
All right, so before we let you go, Jason, just remind us of the timeline of what we'll be seeing over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so camp starts Sunday with the Big Aggie Elite Camp. I look for it to be, pretty action-packed, some familiar names, and we'll be putting together some lists and things like that in preparation of that, and have a little bit of preview there. But then you've got June 3rd, 8th, 10th, and 12th. You got big high school camps and 7-on-7 camps and things like that are going to have some top prospects into campus. And then you got the weekends in June starting June 4th. You're going to have a lot of major prospects in town for official visits, and you'll have June 13th and June 20th with several top prospects in town as well. And then in July, I know it's a month away or more than a month away, but you're going to have, you've already got several top prospects making plans to announce their commitments. July 4th is setting up to be a busy day with, guys like Booby Feaster on the docket planning to make a decision. Brandon Arrington's July 5th, Dorian Barney as well. And then you've got several coming through down the line throughout the end of June and into August. So it should be a lot of fun and action-packed for A&M fans.
Jason, great stuff, brother. Thanks so much for your time.
Always.
See you, man. Jason Howell here on TexAgs Live. All right, we'll hit a break here. We will come back. We're going to talk to Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball, and Bronny's going to join us for that chit-chat. We'll do that here in a few minutes. Right now, headquartered right here on Highway 6 in College Station is the Rollo Insurance Group. They're so good. They share our community's values. They're an independent agency that works for you, not their shareholders. They want to work for you, their clients, right? Their team provides an objective consultation across all insurance lines available in Texas and beyond. Join thousands of Aggies who have trusted Rollo Insurance for them. They take care of them. They protect what matters most. When local matters hit home, like severe weather, regional economic shifts, Rollo agents understand the impact firsthand because they live here as well. Their independence means they can recommend a solution from dozens of carriers based on what's best for you, not what's most profitable for them. That's why so many local families here in the Brazos Valley and beyond make that Rollo difference. They make that call. The difference is real. The difference is 888-44-ROLLO. That is 888-44-ROLLO, or go to rolloinsurance.com. That is rolloinsurance.com. Hey everyone, David Nuño and Olin Buchanan and OB. Typically, we start off the show in this section, and we call it the Holistic Planning Cool
The cool zone, yeah. It's pretty cool.
What do we know about holistic planning?
Well, a lot of cool stuff. For instance, holistic planning can help you with your investments.
I love that.
They can help you with your taxes. So
I don't like paying taxes.
You can get that money from your investments and they keep it. They'll help you keep it away from the government.
Yep.
Not all of it, but more of it. And then they'll even help you with your estate planning. When you're old like me, you got to make sure some of that money you made is there for when you want to retire and just enjoy the rest of your life.
You want your estate to be planned. But they also do something else.
Yeah, well, if you are, like, say, a sports fan, and you've always wanted to...
Everybody watching us, right?
Yeah. And you want to always dream of being an owner, well, in a certain way you can, because they will broker the deal for you to invest in pro sports.
Yeah, what you need to do is check out investinprosports.com. That's where you can get all the information if you want to invest in a team. I don't know what team. He'd probably try to buy the Cowboys. I'd try to buy a lot of the Houston teams. Whatever it may be, investinprosports.com. It is holistic planning, and we love hanging out at the Holistic Planning Cool Zone. was late. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Ryan Broninger in studio with me to talk a little Aggie baseball. As we go to the Buppies Catering Hotline, Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball here to join us. Kendall, good morning, buddy. Okay.
Good morning, Kendall.
Buffalo, hello.
Yeah, sorry about that. We had a little bit of somber music coming into my segment. I feel like maybe you didn't want to hear me or something. I don't know.
Well, it's been a sad time for A&M sports recently, as you may know, Kendall. And look, I'm just going to get right to it. You said you would be very surprised if A&M stands pat with Michael Early last week. Trev Alberts yesterday was asked about the coaching situation. He said he would deal with it when he gets back, that he'll talk to Michael Early. Have your thoughts evolved? Where do you stand today?
I'm still in the same spot. I mean, I think if you, again, I know Mike well, I'm friends with him. I do think when you analyze the A&M situation for Trev Alberts, in today's game of college baseball, and frankly, any college program in any sport, when you have a quick change like that, and if you have an opportunity to right the ship, you take that opportunity. And I think everything that I've heard behind the scenes indicates that a change is coming. I think anyone who looked at Trev Alberts' comments yesterday would probably come to the same conclusion that a change is likely coming. Because here's the thing. If you're standing pat with your current situation, you're probably making it known already that you're going to do that. Like you're not waiting a week to go, oh, actually, we're going to keep our coach. No, you come out, 3 days later and say, we're going to keep our coach. He's our guy. We're moving on. So, I mean, the tea leaves here point to what we're all hearing kind of behind the scenes. And, for A&M, I just think, it's one of those situations to where they have an opportunity to go out and get a really good coach. And I think if you have that opportunity, I think in this scenario, I think you take it.
Well, Kendall, we're going to have plenty of opportunities, you mentioned, to talk about a coaching change if there is one to be made and what A&M, the job looks like on the other side of that. But I want to ask you, with balancing the coverage of regionals and postseason play, which is obviously priority number one for y'all, how are you going about covering what could be in the pipe for scholarships, rev share with this House settlement, and how big of an impact do you expect it to have on college baseball as a whole?
It's going to have a huge impact. I mean, just to give you an idea, how different the SEC schools are going to be just within the conference. I saw Trev came out yesterday saying that, from a scholarship standpoint, A&M was going to be, essentially full scholarship across the board for the major sports. So that was really interesting and kind of what I expected. But when you look at rev share across this conference, there's a program, in the SEC that's going to do $800,000 rev share. I've heard there's programs that are going to do $150,000. There's programs that are going to do $500,000. You might be surprised at a program out there that's going to actually do $0 for rev share. So it's just really interesting to see the balance here of the rev share, the scholarships, the NIL. I think what you're going to see is you have to be careful looking at only rev share and going, oh, wow, they care a lot more about baseball. Their rev share is much higher. Because here's the thing. If you are schools like A&M, like Texas, I would throw LSU in that mix too because they have a lot of access to commercial businesses. If you're schools that have really good access to commercial businesses that are willing to do NIL deals, I don't think you necessarily have to have as much rev share because you can kind of supplement that a little bit with these deals. That's the big thing that people need to understand with this House settlement is, they're putting the clamps down on these collectives that are run by boosters inside the school, but they're also kind of expanding what you're able to do from a commercial standpoint. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where everyone kind of comes down. But there's at least one school that's going to do $800,000 in rev share just for baseball.
I saw the odds on the regionals this morning of the favorites in each of these regionals, and the lowest odds to win the regional were, I believe, Coastal Carolina and Southern Miss, both of those mid-majors hosting with SEC programs alongside them in their regionals. How do you kind of look at those two and then the rest of the league as a whole in terms of getting out and into a super?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. It's funny you mentioned Conway because I was just looking at our D1 Baseball Bracket Challenge, and 75% of the people out of 8,000 brackets already have picked Florida to win that regional. And, I'll touch on that for a second because we look at A&M and just the injury issues they had and whatnot. But, I mean, Florida, if you look at the way they played over the last 3 or 4 weeks, despite their injuries, Luke Hyman out for the year with a fractured forearm. Kate Curlin's been hurt. Pierce Coppola just now came back on the mound over the last few weeks. Sully has done an incredible job to get that team where they are right now. And so, I would say keep an eye on Florida. But, yeah, I could see Southern Miss, too, having some trouble with Bama and Miami for sure.
And then from an A&M perspective, we haven't talked to you since their run in Hoover. Knowing what we know now about they weren't even in the next 4 out, what do you think they would have had to do? Do you think they would have had to have won it, or could they have gotten a Sunday and still gotten in?
I think after looking at 4 stolen bits, I think they would have had to win the whole tournament, to be honest with you. I just think there wouldn't have been a lot of room. Although, I will say this, we had Kentucky as our first team out, and Kentucky wasn't even one of the last 4 teams in the field. So maybe it is one of the scenarios where if they can get to Sunday, they would have had a pretty decent shot, just because the SEC was getting a lot of respect. I will say this season was incredibly frustrating if you're an A&M fan, because think about the last week of the season. Clayton Freshcourt, and again, I'm not singling out like players and going, oh, these guys weren't producing early in the year. But think about the last week of the season. You have, you were looking for stability out of the bullpen all year long. The last week of the season, guys like Freshcorn were unbelievable. So if you're Mike earlier, thinking back and going, where was that in March when we needed 3 outs against Alabama? So there were just little things with A&M's season to where they would show flashes for a week or two, and then things would kind of peter out a little bit. Then all of a sudden, it would come back, and so there was just no consistency with his team. But there were some bright spots in that tournament. I think anybody would agree. Jason's kind of been the talk of college baseball with him battling through that hand injury. I thought that was very admirable. Freshcorn's performance, Lampkin over the last couple of weeks was incredible, really helped his draft stock. I thought Prager looked a lot more comfortable than, Miles Patton was kind of Miles Patton, but just a really odd year for A&M to say the least.
Well, let's go back to Jace and just what were you hearing from your baseball circles about what he chose to do after having the surgery and then his performance that night. I think, just the interactions that we've had amongst Aggies and on the message board, only further solidified his standing as one of the all-time greats here. But I just kind of, you talk to a broader scope of people. What did the college baseball community think of Jace?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. When I first heard that he was going to play, actually I was talking to Jack DeLongchamps with us that does some social media content. And he's like, and I think you might have even said something too. And he texted me right when I was talking to you and was like, hey, he's actually going to play. I was like, yeah, okay, sure he is. But no, he's actually taking batting practice. So I just think from Jason's standpoint, he's like, if it can't get worse, I'll just kind of suck it up. There's probably ways that you can not feel that too much in modern medicine. But I just think it gives you an idea of how much they love their coach and how much he was committed to at least giving this team an opportunity to make a run to the NCAA tournament. So I think it helps him. I think if you're a pro team, you're looking at a guy like that and going, man, if he's willing to fight through that, that's who I want in my professional organization. So there was definitely a lot of buzz about what he chose to do on that day. It was pretty cool.
Kendall, we appreciate it, brother. Take care.
You got it, man. Y'all be good.
See you. Kendall Rogers. All right, Bronny, stick around. Let's talk a little baseball on the other side. Right now, we're talking about Heritage Films. Chance McClain's the founder, the owner of that company. He's a good friend of mine. He's not just a filmmaker. He's a storyteller. He's got an Aggie heart. His daughter went to Texas A&M. He's done Broadway shows. He's done red carpet shows. He's started a radio station. He's done it all. And one of the things he loves doing is capturing his family's stories and telling it, right? And these 2-hour documentary films, we're talking about a professional cinematic equipment that makes you forget that they're even filming. He's an eye in the sky. It just makes for such a cool event. Whether you're on a tractor or in a studio, he captures the authentic heart of your story. It is a premium service that delivers an incredible lasting memory. If you want to preserve your family's story, your family's history, visit yourheritagefilm.com or call them up 713-893-8341. Yourheritagefilm.com, 713-893-8341. This is more than a business. It's a relationship built on trust and on storytelling. Let's talk a little Snaps clothing. David Nuño here, and I love wearing Snaps clothing everywhere. I've got the flannel on right now. You've seen me in the Tailgater collection with the A&M gear. It is fantastic. If you see me around town with my sons, Christian and Cruz, they've got a bunch of Snaps gear. When they have big games for Consol, they wear nice clothes, so they wear their Snap stuff. And I'm telling you, with baseball season here, let's all kind of go looking stylish and fit to the games there at Olsen wearing the Snaps clothing. As a reminder, they are the only official licensed Texas A&M Pearl Snaps maker out there. Their Tailgater collection is built for game day with breathable, moisture-wicking fabrics to keep you comfortable while you rep your Aggies in style. Now, whether you're watching the game from home or maybe you're in attendance, you're tailgating, whatever it may be, you got to make sure you head to snapsclothing.com to see everything they have to offer. It is fashionable, it is awesome, and you're going to love it. Around the SEC, brought to you by the Jackster Group. It's TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Bronny's still here in studio. All right, so everyone's kind of weighing in and trying to Zapruder film what Trev said yesterday. What was your takeaway from Trev?
Yeah, it obviously seems like, and Kendall made a good point, like, you know, if it was going in the direction of keeping Mike early, those were weird comments to make if it was trending that direction. I do like that he's going to have a sit down and a face-to-face with him. I think that's the honorable thing to do, no matter what your ultimate decision is. That's the right way to do it. Yeah, and you know, I'm not going to be on here today to break any news. Like, you know, Billy talked about it extensively, I believe, yesterday, and no definitive decision has been made from, you know, checking with all of our sources. Yep. There's a lot of talk in the agent and scouting world about what's to come, but nothing's definitive has happened. And so, you know, I think that you have to look at all angles of this. And like we said all season, there was no reason to jump the gun in February and March when they were playing bad to make a definitive decision. There was no reason in April when they were playing well. No reason in May. Let's look at the whole thing when it's done, and then let's have a discussion and examination of it.
So let's just say that Trev is actually doing that. He's going to evaluate the situation after talking to Michael Early. What can Michael do to make a compelling case to keep him?
Well, I think, first of all, he's going to have to go in there with a plan of action. Like, hey, this is what I did wrong. We can go line by line the things that I screwed up. Here's how I intend on planning to change them on day one of the fall. So when these kids come back in August, this is my plan to change from day one. Not integrate this stuff in. This will be different about my program from day one. These are things that I could not have known going into last year that I'm very much aware of this year. These are things that I can control, that I screwed up, that I will change day one. And I think the number one thing that would be on my list, if I'm looking at that, is taking control of every aspect of the program and stop. And I've said this a bunch. I think because of his relationship with those players and how the hiring went last year, he trusted them.
Yeah.
And on a certain level, you can understand why he trusted those players. He knew them so well. But I think in that trust, he gave them too much leeway and too many choices, too much freedom, And there's a realization now that that building needs a big bad wolf. And I think Michael Early can be the big bad wolf. Like, I think now that he knows what he screwed up, I think he can walk in day one and really change kind of the whole mentality of him as the head coach of the program, right, of the whole thing. And secondly, I think there is an avenue for Mike Early to be a better coach for players he doesn't know as well, right? A lot of those guys knew Mike intimately. He was in there, the cage, day to day with them. He was Mike, the hitting coach. He was the guy that we called when we need to go up there and hit. We needed extra work. And that's an incredibly respectful aspect to have as a coach. And it's endearing, it's admirable. That's exactly what you want to do as a young coach. But when you flip the switch and you go from young assistant coach to head man, there just wasn't that hard line in the sand. And a lot of that is no fault of Mike's at all. These kids knew him so well.
Right.
So I do think that a different crop of players don't view him as Mike, my hitting coach turned head coach. They just view him as head coach Mike Early. So if I were in the room making the pitch as Coach Early, those were some of the things that I would start with.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Olin to start off the show. And I know you can't do this, but just for conversation's sake, if you could take away the Missouri series from ever happening, okay? Everything stays the same. And I'm not saying do they make the postseason or not, because I think if you take that, I think you're probably in the postseason. But how do we look at what Michael Early did after the start?
I don't think it's even a discussion, at least not right now. You're going to be going to a regional, and maybe the discussion, probably not as loud, but maybe you at least had the discussion after the regional. But I would lean heavily toward him staying in the job and getting another year. But the Missouri series does happen, and you just talk to enough people in the baseball circles my baseball circles that are saying, God, I really want to see him get another year, but that Missouri series is a killer. And that's true. And I don't think that's news to Mike Early. Like, he's a very self-aware guy, very cognizant of what that series meant. And that is definitely when the worm started to turn on this thing in terms of what his future looked like here. So I think the proper steps are being made right now. And we'll obviously we'll know a lot more in the next probably 5 to 7 days.
And what about the way the players responded after the season was over, but during their time in Hoover? Because you saw some guys, not only Jace's gritty performance coming, and doing it for Early, but doing it for A&M as well, but also just the way they played as a unit.
Yeah, it's admirable. They put themselves in a bad position and they fought tooth and nail to get out of it. And it was, how many times did I say it this year? The stuff that was plaguing this team wasn't really a cultural dugout clubhouse kind of vibe to me. It was more, how are they executing in the game of baseball? And what's funny about that is the one weekend where I saw a ton of bad body language and just kind of a lack of will to win was the Missouri series. Yeah. And that was the only time during the year where I was like, what is going on? And that's why it was kind of so inexplicable to me, was because from my vantage point, I hadn't seen any of those issues. What I saw was issues with executing the game of baseball. And then when you get in the SEC tournament, I didn't see any kind of cultural bad body language elements that were holding them back. In fact, they were playing really hard, and it was keeping them in games, and they pitched well. And then in the finale against LSU, the head coach makes a brilliant call on a safety squeeze, and it's not executed. Again, it's baseball stuff. I mean, they're hanging in there. They're throwing their number 3, Miles Patton, and a guy out of the bullpen, Clayton Freshcorn, who was awesome. Maybe the best relief outing A&M had all year. But they were up against Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson for LSU. And really, if they execute the game of baseball late, it's at least tied going into the final frames. And who knows how that last inning plays out when you get 2 guys on with 2 outs in a tie game. It may all be different. But again, it was the game of baseball, the executing some high level, some low level stuff that didn't get done consistently. That was the issue.
Thank you, Bronny.
Yeah.
All right, tomorrow on the program, Aaron Torres. I believe Billy will join us because he won't be around Friday. And the fan show, guys. That and more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll catch up with you guys mañana.